This is Off The Brawl on offtheball.com. I am Niall McGrath in with another episode to talk about the world of mixed martial arts. Alongside me, listen, this man needs no introduction. He does give me a headache every day of the week, but it is Simon Maguire. Simon, how are you on this beautiful, fresh winter's morning here in the fight capital of Europe in Dublin? What's the crack?
I was up at 5:30, so I'm not as good as mood as you are, but yeah, we're getting there. I'm
in great form today. You haven't given me a headache right at the start of this show.
At all, no.
And on Skype we have the Blanchardstown Butcher, Mr. Petesy Carroll. Petesy, how are you, my friend? What's happening?
I'm very good, lads. Thanks for having me on again.
Jeez, that's a nice microphone you have there, Petesy, as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I robbed it off some Southsider.
Oh, what was his name? Niall, by any chance, was it?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
All right, welcome into the show today, guys. Lots to talk about. Big weekend of mixed martial arts just gone by. We're going to be looking back at some of the fights from UFC Moncton last weekend in New Brunswick, Canada. Also, we'll be talking about the big news, the big trade in the world of mixed martial arts. Probably the first time we've ever seen it to this magnitude on this scale, and that is DJ. Demetrius Johnson is gone to ONE FC, and Ben Askren is gone to the UFC. So, listen, for me, we can get into that in a few minutes' time. I'm not too particularly happy on it, but we'll be talking about that a little bit later on the show. Also on the show, Ian McCall, a man who's been in there with Demetrius Johnson, will be stopping by in the show, also to talk about his retirement, what he's been doing next, Dana White, and also the future of that UFC Flyweight division. He weighs in on that. So really interesting stuff from Uncle Creepy Ian McCall a little bit later on the show. We'll also be looking forward to this weekend's action at UFC 230 in Madison Square Garden. Not a New York card for me, but it's going to be very interesting to see how the ticket sales go there as well. Not looking great for the UFC as Daniel Cormier defends his UFC light heavyweight title against Derek Lewis. God, nearly slipped my mind there for a minute. Interesting fight card, that one. Obviously, big reports yesterday as well that Georges St-Pierre will be fighting Khabib Nurmagomedov. Weight class hasn't been announced. Going to be interesting, the permutation, see if that comes to fruition. Interesting stuff. Also going to be looking at some of the fight announcements for a massive Cage Warriors 100 card, which goes down in a number of weeks' time, right over there across the water in Wales in the Motorpoint Arena. First of all, lads, I want to have a little chat about Moncton at the weekend. Artem Lobov was in action against Michael Johnson. Obviously, Michael Johnson taking the fight on short notice. First of all, Pete, I want to throw to you, just in terms of the performance, both guys going into this fight, checkered sort of between wins and losses. How crucial was this for Michael Johnson to get a win in this fight against Artem Lobov?
I think, yeah, it was very important for Michael to come in. Obviously, he was considered like a lightweight contender for a small time. After that knockout of Dustin Poirier. So I feel like he's only gone down to featherweight to make a run at that. It hasn't gone brilliantly for him so far. Even the win against Feely was very questionable as far as most people were concerned. So, I think he definitely needed to win that fight, and I don't think he would have taken it on such short notice if he wasn't convinced that he could get the win.
We spoke about this fight, Petesy, in terms of both guys, not winning their last number of fights. It's been very checkered, as we said there. Is this, for our time, is this the end of the road in the UFC? Because, in fairness, we did say that both guys always put on a show, and I think we saw that again on Saturday night. Are the UFC going to give him another opportunity after this?
I think it'd be incredibly foolish if they didn't. Just in terms of getting eyes on events like this, Artem, some people argue whether he should be a co-main event or he should be a headline or should he be on the undercard. But the fact is, he was more talked about in the lead up to this fight than anyone on the card, including Volkan Ozdemir and Anthony Smith, who were in the main event. Look, this is a debate we've been having for a long time about MMA, UFC. UFC, it isn't meritocracy driven. They care about who sells, who people care about. And for whatever reason it is, Artem is a guy who can really sell fights to people, make people care. He wasn't even doing interviews in the lead up to this fight. And that was the most interesting thing anyone said in the lead up to it. You know what I mean? That's pretty impressive.
Definitely. Simon, what do you think? Is this something we can move on from? And I think the UFC have maybe taken away that element. It used to be 3 strikes and you're out. It seems now there's a number of fighters in there that have maybe 4 or 5 losses, and the UFC are still giving them fights.
Yeah, how can you get rid of Artem after that performance? It was an exciting fight from start to the end. You gave Johnson a very good run for his money, and it was really only maybe the last 2 minutes 20 of the third round that he visibly tired.
You thought he won the second round?
Yeah, I had him winning the second round, just about. Like when you look at the scorecards, they were very wide, and if you were just to not look at the fight and see the scorecards, you'd think Artem got slaughtered. But he didn't really. I thought it was 2-1 to Johnson. I gave Artem the second round just about. I mean, even the first round was very close. I think it was Johnson landed a big left with about 40 seconds to go, which kind of really sealed him the round. But up until that point, you know, your kind of judges could be funny and could have gone either way, and that sealed the round for Johnson. But I mean, it was a brilliant fight. Artem, if he landed one of those kind of wild uppercuts, Johnson could have landed outside the octagon. He just never connected with one. But
for me, you know, Johnson never really looked in danger in the fight, and I had it 30-27 to him. I thought it was there was no argument who won the fight for me in terms of that.
Yeah, I agree. No, Johnson won the fight, but it was a lot closer than the scorecard suggested. Artem turned up the fight. He put in a great performance. People really enjoyed it. Yeah. It was probably the best fight of the night, bar the knockout we'll get to later on. And I don't think you can get rid of him. I think there's a couple of interesting fights out there for him. Possibly Do Hoo Choi. I know he hasn't fought since January. But I mean, they both gave Cub a great run for his money. Ultimately, Cub came through the two fights, but I think those two could have a barn burner in the main event.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it's maybe a little bit too early to start talking about potential opponents. Just see how it pans out with the UFC first. But a guy who always does bring it, in fairness to me, he will fight anyone. I always say that about Artem. A great guy to have in the promotion. Also, Michael Johnson, a guy who I very much look forward to fighting. Now, lads, I have to mention it because, Pete, we talked about it on the Eurobash podcast. A guy I'm very high on, Don Madge, he fought T. Edwards in an absolutely sensational performance and knockout. I think this guy, and I know it's very early to say this, he's been around a long, long time, great Muay Thai history. He's had some absolute wars back in the EFC, still a young guy, but that was one of these performances where you're going, this kid is star power if he can kick on from here.
Yeah, and absolutely. And when you're one of those kind of guys that has media members talking before you've even made your debut, you can't really get a more emphatic win than that and have a more spectacular win than that. Like, I mean, the big head kick, as you mentioned yesterday on our show, the armbar attempt, like he's far more well-rounded than you anticipated, and you were already excited about him. So it kind of reminds me of like Israel Adesanya when he came in, having a big performance, backing up what everyone says, and once you can carry that momentum, you can end up on Madison Square Garden cards. You know what I mean? So like that's the way it goes. 100%,
and we'll be talking about Israel Adesanya in a couple of minutes' time. But for me, Don Madge is that kind of guy. He's the attitude as well to back it up. So I'm really excited to see what comes from him in the future. And hopefully, I've been in touch with Don in the past. Hopefully, we'll have him on in the next couple of weeks. There's a lot of excitement in South Africa about him. An absolutely sensational fighter. I want to get to the main event here now, lads. Anthony Smith versus Volkan Ozdemir. Simon, for me, it was one of these sort of opportunities for Ozdemir to maybe kick it on and get back up to that title contention after losing that fight to Daniel Cormier. For me, it was almost as if it was a sloppy performance for me. I thought, he tired very quickly. He's a guy, obviously, that hasn't really gone, I think, past maybe Petesy was the second round in his UFC career until this fight.
Yeah, I think he had a streak of I think it was 7 first-round wins on the way to the UFC, and that got slowed down, obviously, when he got that decision against Owen St. Preux in his debut.
So Simon, for you, was it a case of maybe a little bit of a hangover maybe going into this fight, coming down off that title fight? It's sometimes hard for a guy to get rejuvenated and get back in the picture. In fairness to Anthony Smith, he was very good, but a sloppy performance from Volkan Ozdemir.
Yeah, you could say maybe he wasn't mentally gearing up to fight the number 10. When you go from fighting for the title down to fighting just outside the top 10 ranked contender, you're kind of defending your spot more than anything else. And Smith came in and got the job done. I mean, does that put him in title contention? I don't think so. Just because you beat the number 2 guy doesn't make...
The problem here for me is the lack of actual real contenders the UFC have in that light heavyweight division. That's why I think his stock has been elevated up. I particularly don't want to see him get a title shot yet. I do agree with you, but I just don't think the UFC have many options after Gustafsson and obviously John Jones throw down in December, because obviously Daniel Cormier is still the light heavyweight champion until that fight actually happens, but the winner of that will be the champion afterwards, and there's not really an awful lot of contenders coming through in that light heavyweight division. There's not. No, well, I mean, if Reyes would be the pick of the bunch coming through for the next out of the blue title shot, I think I'd like to see Smith go up maybe against Glover Teixeira and then really see where he's at. Bad call, yeah. I mean, Teixeira's won 3, lost 3 in his last 6, and he's coming off a loss to Corey Anderson, so we can really see where Smith is. He backs the win at the weekend up against Volkan with a win against Teixeira. Then, title shot has been earned. Yeah, very interesting. Petesy, what was your assessment on that performance? We spoke about it yesterday as well. For me, something you know, I don't want to see Smith get in there yet, but I think, you know, the UFC obviously are running out of options, as we said. Is it a title shot? Is he going to sit? Is he going to wait? What's he going to do?
It's not a title shot, but he is definitely right to be saying, give me a title shot. That sounds ridiculous when you're talking about any other sport, but in MMA that makes perfect sense. Of course it does. Because you want to be aligning yourself with the top of that division, and really, like, to be fair to him, look what Volkan Ozdemir did to serious fighters like Jimmy Mano in the first round, Serkinov in the first round. You know, like, the fact that Anthony Smith basically just allowed him to pour everything he had for 10 minutes onto him, and he still managed to get the win. That's massively impressive. Like, I'm not overlooking that. But also, we need to remember Volkan Ozdemir has gone through a hellish court case that just ended up with the guy going, oh well, it actually didn't happen, or something like this, and then it gets pulled away. He's been on the sidelines for far longer than he wanted to be because of this issue that turned out to be a non-issue. So I think that definitely factored into the camp, as we saw likely with Conor McGregor in his camp against Khabib and Magomedov. There was a whole court proceeding that had to happen before that fight could take place, and I think it'd be very stupid for anyone to say that doesn't have an impact on people.
Well, what else can the UFC do? Can they put, you know, as you mentioned there, Misha Serkinov up against possibly Anthony Smith next? Does that make sense?
Maybe not, because Serkinov was coming off on a 2-fight loss. He got back to winning ways there. I'd agree with Simon. I think that's a good shout. Get him in against a guy like Glover, who's fought for the title before, because, you know, that's going to put him in that line. Yeah,
no, I totally agree. It's, you know, it's a fight I'd definitely watch out for. And, you know, as you said, you know, Glover Teixeira, obviously a bit of a powerhouse as well. So, listen, I think it'd be just a good fight generally, and full stop. All right, guys, let's get to it. First interview of the day. I caught up with Ian McCall to talk about the trade issues in the UFC. They're getting rid of Demetrius Johnson, and obviously Ben Askren is coming the other way from one championship. Ian obviously recently retired flyweight, who's been in there twice with DJ, so great to get his thoughts on retirement. Demetrius Johnson gone to ONE FC, Askren coming over, Dana White, and the future of the UFC Flyweight division. First time on Off The Brawl, on offtheball.com. A good friend of mine, I've known him for many years, Uncle Creepy, Mr. Ian McCall. Ian, first of all, my friend, great to have you on. How are you, my friend?
Doing very good. Thank you very much for having me.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. It's been too long. We haven't spoke since you announced your retirement. Obviously 5 months retired. You're obviously living it up there. Look at the sun in the background there in Orange County. Look at this, guys. Unbelievable.
Doesn't suck. Like I was saying, the gym that I work at is the nicest gym around. So I just get to sit here and eat and hang out and drink good coffee and meet nice people and make some money.
What are you doing exactly with the gym now? I mean, are you heading up the MMA program there?
It's not MMA. It's called Mixed Combat Arts.
Okay.
And we're trying to build a program, but it's going to take a while. You know, this stuff doesn't happen overnight. This is a giant corporate company, and they're worth $5.5 billion, I think. Wow. So, it's going to take time to implement it. But yes, I would like to build a full MMA program, start some jiu-jitsu for kids and adults, and kickboxing and what have you. But I just got to see which direction we want to take it.
Ian, how has it been since you retired? Obviously, it's 5 months, I think, now since you've retired. Mentally, how have you been? Has everything been all good? You're a guy who's obviously, you know, openly admitted some of your demons in the past. Is everything all good upstairs? Are you at peace with your mixed martial arts career?
I am now. I wasn't at first, man. My friend JJ Thomas, was a pro snowboarder. He's Shaun White's half-pipe coach. He won a bronze medal for the U.S. in the Olympics in snowboarding. And when he found out I was retiring, he goes, "Man, you know this is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done." He's like, "You're like me. This is all you've ever done." And he listed the steps it was going to take. He said, "You know, you're going to go through this. You're going to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and then you're going to come out as a better person on the end." He goes, "I know you right now. You don't want to teach. You're over the sport." I was jaded. I was over it, and I didn't know what direction to go. I was depressed. I was in bed for a while. Retirement was the hardest thing I've ever been through. I'll be honest with you. And you got to think, all I've ever done is fight. I'm 34 years old. This is my first real job I've ever had. People go, "Oh, well, fighting was a real job." No, it wasn't. It was a fantasy. It was a boyhood fantasy that I got to live from 18 to 34. Okay, that's over with, and it really took, a few friends of mine kind of verbally slapping me around to go, okay. Like one of my buddies was a hairstylist. He was supposed to be. He had 2 chances in the music industry. 2. Like I had a lot of friends in music, to see someone get 2 chances as a lead singer when you're a degenerate, drug addict, and like he threw all of it away because of drugs. Yeah. And he's been at that pinnacle of life where, and he blew it, which I have too. But he goes, well, how does it feel not to be the coolest guy in the room anymore? And I went, oh, you know what? Thank you. I needed that. Like, I'm not the coolest guy in the room anymore. I'm fine with that. Like, I don't want to be that guy anymore. I don't want to crave the attention. And when you first retire, there's no more messages, no more text messages, phone calls, interviews, spotlight, travel. All this stuff goes away. Poof. Especially for someone like me. I did a lot of traveling.
Yeah, no, of course.
And I don't anymore. And I'm happy for it because now I have jobs. I have more than one job. I will finally be able to travel for just the love of traveling for once in a long time. The only trip I've taken over the last, besides local trips to like Lake Tahoe or something, the only trip out of the country I've taken in recent years for pleasure was going to Costa Rica, to a surf camp in the middle of nowhere like that, and that was one. I can't even count it. Every trip I go on is I'm sitting in the back of a car getting driven somewhere, and I know that sounds bougie and stupid, but we gotta complain. No, you just don't get to see everything I want to see. I like traveling. I like going to the ghetto and eating. I like going to dangerous parts of town. Like, it's just fun for me.
Have you found it? Have you found adjustments? They'll always say you need to find a new drug of choice after fighting. That adrenaline rush, that buzz. Is your work now that? Do you feel as though that's the case?
It's very time consuming, and I get to teach other people what I love to do. That's the main thing. If I can make people's life better and teach them something that's beneficial for them, and cool. But honestly, it's my daughter. That's what, she's kept me in jiu-jitsu. She's 6, she'll be 7 on Friday. She wants to start competing in jiu-jitsu. And it really re-sparked my interest in jiu-jitsu was the fact that she goes, wait, I can compete now? I'm like, yes. She goes, I can win a world title like you? I'm like, yes. She goes, you want to do it together? And I said, sure. So I did make her a little promise, which I have to keep, to go win a jiu-jitsu world title. I had to get my black belts in gi and no gi. Big focus right now is jiu-jitsu and wrestling, but I don't. The thing is, like you said, that drug you have that is fighting, fighting and performing in front of millions of people. I'll never find that again. And you know what? I don't want it anymore. I'm over it. I have better drugs. I have better, like my kid. Sure, I am single now, but that just gives me more time to focus on just my child and the 3 or 4 jobs that I have now.
Yeah. You said you're single again. It's obviously you were engaged, I think. Is that correct? At one point?
I was supposed to get married this year.
Okay. That was obviously hard. So it's been a tough year for Ian McCall.
It hasn't been easy. I hate to call anyone an anchor because Alicia wasn't, made me a better person.
Yeah.
But yeah, broke up, it's over, I got rid of that anchor. Because now I have to just focus on, like I said, I've got 3 jobs. I announced all 3 of them last week. I work here full time. I'm 40 hours a week at Lifetime Fitness, And then I am on the board of directors for budtrader.com, which is a cannabis lifestyle website. It's a marketplace. The largest marketplace in North America, Canada, Puerto Rico. Over 2 million subscribers, and some of the board of directors who run their lifestyle. I'm an investor in the company. They actually called me a philanthropist. First time anyone called me a philanthropist, and I went, ooh, I like that. Okay, I like that wording. I'm a philanthropist now. Great. Then I'm invested into another company called Elixir, which is another cannabis brand, that's blowing up everywhere. But I set the seeds in the ground years ago, and I am the UFC's cannabis guy. Jeff Nowitzki is my mentor of sort, pushing me through this whole process, and asked me to make them a product. And people ask me, well, you don't care about other people in the business hear this? I don't give a flying fuck, because I know that my company that I work with is so far ahead of everyone else that it doesn't matter. People can try and play catch up all they want. I'm the one who talks to Jeff. I'm the one that Jeff asked me to make the UFC and this fighter product. So there's a doctor from Harvard. The day before I had my meeting with Jeff and Heather Linden, who's the head
physio.
at the Performance Institute, there was a doctor named Leif something. I don't remember his name. I should really know that. He's from Harvard. He sat in front of the World Boxing Council, their yearly meeting, and gave a speech about the benefits of CBD and how fighters should be forced to take it after, to get rid of CTE, brain damage, concussions, all that stuff. And to have someone like Jeff Nowitzki
embrace it.
Go, hey, I need you to make this for the young fighter, for old fighter, any fighter in general. Men, women, child, doesn't matter. Actually, children shouldn't fight. But you know, if you're in the UFC, if you're in combat sports, and I can create something for you, that gave me purpose. Again, I've been fighting since I was 18 professionally. I've been fighting my whole life.
Yeah.
I've been fist fighting my whole life. You know, I've you know, everyone knows my past. It's wild and crazy. I'm over it. But now I have purpose because I get to build something for these young guys. And sure, there's money involved. I'll make a lot of money. Great. I'm going to be okay. It's not about the money.
You've talked about this. You've talked about that for years on the show. You know, the show we used to do on Talking Brawls, and we spoke about, you know, your involvement in the cannabis industry, and it's something obviously, you know, going back a long way. You've been involved with Jeff Nowitzki, the UFC. What's your relationship like with them now? Because I know at one point you were potentially going to do an analyst role. You went out for, I think, Dana White Contender Series, something like that. Is there a relationship with the UFC at all? I know obviously you last fought for Horizon, but is the relationship good with the UFC?
Oh yeah, the UFC and I mean, we're in bed together of sorts for business, you know. And I made that happen. I'm proud of myself. Literally, I just announced it last week, and this has been going on for a while. But you know, I've known Dana and them since I was a teenager.
Yeah.
You know, when Chuck was coming up, like that's how I met everybody. So I have a different relationship. But me and Jeff's he's legitimately my friend. That man has sat by my side in hospital beds in other countries, in this country. You know, he's just a genuinely good guy, and he knows that I'm not in this for the wrong reasons. You task me with something that makes my little world a better place, then cool. That's all I'm about now. It's just about making this world better. And again, people are like, oh, well, money. I'm like, yeah, that'll come. I get to follow my passion. I'm gonna make money at any one of my 3 or 4 jobs that I have. And I have a podcast, and I have a few other projects that are happening. You know, I've got multiple companies that are in the process of being built in that cannabis realm. You know, there's so much opportunity for me here that, again.
Is the analyst role something you'd like to do though? Go back, like.
I'd love to do that. And back to that, I blew it. I'll be totally honest. I dropped the ball. I showed up, and there was Robin Black and Alan Jabwan and a few other guys, and I didn't have any notes. No one told me what I was doing. I just showed up in a nice suit, you know. But my nice suit's a couple grand. Alan's in a Versace suit, and he's a Versace model. I'm like, you win, man. Like, okay, I'm a little out of my depth there. And then you got Robin Black, who's so good. That's the guy I look up to. Now, I went in there, no notes, nothing. I was hungover. I went out partying the night before in Hollywood. You can't give me that much rope, okay? I completely blew it, and I looked so bad that day. And then I was like, oh man. So I would like, if UFC's listening to this, I would love to try out again. But you know what? I might not have the time. You know, I might not have time to do it anymore because I'm busy. So maybe I don't want to do it. But that would be a fun job. It really would, because I know I'm good at it, and I know that people would like to see me in front of the camera. But like I said, I screwed up the first chance I had. So I would understand if they said, "No, you're next."
Yeah. Give him another go, Dana. Come on. It'd be great. It'd be good to see McCall in the booth.
Honestly, I've got so much on my plate right now. I don't care.
Yeah.
But it would be fun. It would be.
Definitely. Let's move to obviously Demetrius Johnson, a guy you've been in there with, you know, on a number of occasions, and you know, a fight in Brisbane. We can talk about it. What are your thoughts as someone who's been in there with DJ on the whole situation with the UFC? Let him go over to one, the first magnitude, you know, huge, large MMA trade in between the world organizations. Do you think it's the right call from the UFC?
Yeah, honestly, they don't care about DJ. They made that very apparent, and it's you know,
they don't care about the flyweights as far as I'm concerned, and I think it's always been an issue.
They don't, and sure, now they have Henry, who was this Olympic gold medalist at like 19 or whatever he was.
Yeah.
But again, you have a guy that's not very marketable. No one cares about Henry Cejudo. And I don't mean to say anything mean about him, because he's an amazing athlete and fighter, but no one cares. And you're on top of it, you're an Olympic gold medalist, and no one gives a shit. So it's interesting to see how that's all going to work out.
Well, there is rumours that Henry's going to go fight TJ Dillashaw for the 135-pound title. Does that spell the end of the flyweight division? Because you actually, I think, were the one that said it to me possibly a year ago. You were the one who heard the rumour that were actually interested in acquiring the UFC flyweight division. Do you think that's something that is a big possibility?
I honestly, I haven't had my ear to the ground lately.
But that was very much talked about.
It was very much talked about, and from good, reputable sources. You know, I don't speak on anything unless I have more content stuff. And sure, I don't say everything I don't say everything that's in my little Rolodex of knowledge here. But this trade was good for the sport, to be honest. That's what we should be doing. We should be trading guys back and forth. And Ben Askren put it really well. He said, I'm being traded for, obviously they want me. I'm being traded for arguably the best mixed martial artist of all time.
Yeah, I agree.
And to have him put it out there, I was like, wow, okay, that's true. And you got to grip the magnitude of it all. Matt Hume works for one.
Yes, and he coaches Ben.
Yeah, I'm sure the deal that DJ got was incredible. Just like Eddie Alvarez, I'm sure they're going to be co-promoting, so he's going to have that side of it. But DJ's not in this for the money. I think we've all learned that. DJ's not in this for the money. So I think he'll get more respect out there. I know he will.
Yeah, I agree.
The Asian culture in general, Asia as a whole, will embrace him more. I mean, that people don't really understand how big ONE FC is. It's huge. They have a lot of money. Chatri Sikatong is a very smart man, and runs this company incredibly well. So it's exciting to see these sort of things happen in a sport that hasn't yet gravitated towards this sort of thing yet.
What do you think of Ben Askren and his chances? I know we had a short text conversation the other night in terms of what Ben's going to bring to the UFC in that welterweight division. You know, for me, I still think there's a lot of questions to be answered for in regarding the level of opposition he's fought. And the welterweight division in the UFC at the moment is for me, is a division that's absolutely thriving. There's new guys emerging over the last year, the likes of Kamaru Usman, you've Ponzinibbio, Darren Till's got a title shot, obviously lost, but he's going to learn a lot from that, a young guy as well. You've Gunnar Nelson, you've names like that all over the place, younger sort of fighters. For me, it's a big, big ask for a guy like Ben Askren and the level of opposition he's fought. In terms of MMA now, I'm talking about, to come over and make a big, big statement. What are your thoughts on him and what he's going to bring to the UFC welterweight division?
Well, let's go back to the rumor mill from years ago. I mean, years ago, rumor mill, that he was toying with everybody, including T. Wood. Including one of the welterweights of all time. And, they've known each other since they were children. But that Ben just runs roughshod over everybody in the gym. And to think that that's even a possibility over someone like Tyron, who it's Tyron Woodley.
Yeah, I mean, phenomenal.
That's insane. And I have seen Ben roll with Marcelo Garcia. I remember years ago watching a video on roll with Marcelo, and he looked, it's just so good. I saw him in Dallas when Carla lost to Joanna a while back.
Yeah.
And was just watching him move around with like CM Punk and people like that, and just he is funky. Yes, he's got the funk. He always will, and I love it. I'm a California wrestler at heart. California wrestlers have a lot of funk. And man, the guy, I think that he'll be able to contend and beat everybody. To be honest, I have faith, and maybe I am riding on a high of the U.S. World's team just won, crushing it. They just smashing everybody. We have this new breed of American wrestlers, this new team. Jordan Burroughs didn't even place first.
Wow.
But you have all these other guys, Dake and other amazing wrestlers that have just killed it. So maybe that's part of it, that I'm like, he's going to wrestle everybody. But at the same time, he's got great jiu-jitsu. And how many of his last 3 or 4 fights have ended in knockout? Or TKO?
A lot of them, anyway. Yeah, he's finished most of them, as far as I'm aware. Yeah.
Yeah, people want to talk, trash or whatever, but whatever, let him.
Yeah. No, listen.
If you can't get up with another person on top of you and you're a fighter, you're losing. You lose that fight.
I'm just disappointed in terms of what we've lost in Demetrius Johnson. I have to say,
of course,
that's my gripe, and I've always, in terms of the flyweight division, always got behind the flyweights because I think it's just probably one of the most technically gifted divisions in mixed martial arts. Has Dana White handled this whole situation well in terms of the respect towards the fighters in the division? I know you've had a tumultuous sort of relationship back and forth with Dana White over the years. Could he be doing more?
Well, you know what? Me and Dana have always gotten along, but he's scolded me a couple times, and I deserve it. I've deserved it. Everything I've done, I've gotten in trouble for. I deserve. Okay, but Dana's. All you have to do is go look at Ben Askren's Instagram.
Yeah, I know.
And he posts everything. Hey boss, unblock me. Hey, look at Dana's following me. It's hilarious. And if you know Dana as a person, which people get a really deep insight into him as a person. That's how he works. He loves this sport. He loves this company. He loves fighting. I mean, he's a fighter at his heart. So people misconstrue what he does and says because he wears his heart in his sleeve and he says, 4-letter words and
maybe not what he says, Ian. His actions, in relation.
His actions, yes. And I think they've changed. I think they've changed for the better. But some guys, you're never going to get along with. Yeah. That's not changed. You're the head of this giant corporation, and you're dealing with other strong-willed individuals who get in fistfights for a living for money. All we want is blood money.
Well, maybe in terms then of a guy like you who's now retired, other names that retired over the last number of years. I know the sport is new, but could the promotion maybe doing something more to help out these fighters and advise them, in future career on how to conduct themselves? Because obviously there's no fighter union. That's going to be a major issue for years to come. Should the UFC maybe do something a little more, go above and beyond?
Yeah, and that's another mission of mine, is to try and figure out a way to. And again, I'm not. The unions are gross to me. They're a necessary evil, but they are gross. Union workers. The whole thing is very slippery slope. We have to engage with it right. But if I can provide, let's say it's through a company like Lifetime.
Yeah.
What if I build a program and they've got 135 gyms around the country? What if I can provide fighters the jobs at these ultra luxurious gyms around the country? No one else does it. Go look at other sports. Look at race car driving, surfing, snowboarding, motorcycles, whatever, any sort of action sports or regular sports in general. I mean, baseball, football, those guys do get jobs in their industry, but they make so much money they don't need to. Whereas fighters like myself, you don't make enough money where industry companies need to keep you in the game. And the thing is, we don't have any companies. There's no clothing brands. There's
that's because of the UFC and in many.
It's the only reason why we don't have them is because of the UFC. Yeah. And I'm not saying anything bad. They know it. They did it themselves. But we need to start taking care of our own, because
exactly
when fighters are done, they get thrown to the gutter, and you've got brain damage, you've broken body, you've got no money, or maybe a little, who knows? You're viewed as disposable. And we need to start figuring out a way to get guys jobs within the company or within the sport somehow. And just being referees and being judges
doesn't cut it.
There's not that many jobs there. We need. I'm tasking myself with figuring out a way to get people more jobs and get people to advance this sport on a better level. And take care of my kind, because you guys are all I have. You understand? I'm a fighter. I'm still a fighter. Even though my sporting career is over, now I'm looking at myself as a father. And I don't want to say father figure to these fighters, but maybe a role model or just a person that they know cares about them.
Do you think the MMA community then could do more and maybe reach out, like maybe a journalist or something, to a retired fighter, just check in, how you doing? time again, because you obviously go through, as you said, a massive slump after you retire, and you're pretty goddamn depressed, I'd imagine, for quite some time.
Yeah, it's hard, man. Like I told you, retirement was the hardest thing that I've ever been through, and a lot of depression, especially if you're dealing with things like brain damage.
Yeah.
Things and bipolar, and episodes, and all this different stuff that people go through. The one thing I want to say to anyone out there who's dealing with those sort of issues: diet. Get on a high-fat diet. And I mean, everyone jumps to this whole keto thing. It works, man. It makes your brain feel better. Get a lot of healthy fats in it for your brain because you need it. A lot of water, a lot of healthy fats. Also, if you're done fighting, there's things like peptides. Helped me feel way better. Got rid of my depression and bipolar episodes. It's called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's a peptide you can take. That again, it's not illegal. It's just good science. And it just protects your brain, and there's certain things you can do on a physical level. The right supplements, the right diet, the right exercise. You got to keep exercising. When you're done, flies are here. You can't stop moving. We're fighters. You have to have a sedentary lifestyle. There's a lot of lifestyle stuff that fighters need to realize once they're done fighting. They have to keep up with certain things.
Were the people? Did you have someone to talk to after you finished your career? Was there anyone there you could reach out to give you advice? Maybe Chuck, someone like that.
Yeah, of course. Chuck, Vinny Shorman, my mental coach.
Yeah.
I'm different. I'm lucky. I'm spoiled. I've got the right people in my life to look at and go, okay, like this is what you need to do, A, B, and C if you want to get to this certain point. And I had to do those. And you had to have structure in your life, and you have to implement really basic things that seem basic, but they're not. Especially for a fighter, we're so used to a certain lifestyle. Especially if you're like me, that's all I've ever done. I don't know anything else. Sure, I know business. Obviously, I've built a life for myself outside of the sport, and I've been doing so for the past few years. But I know I'm different. I'm always going to be all right. Like, people don't need to worry about me. I'm going to be okay. But I worry about other fighters who, maybe aren't as well versed in business or aren't as smart.
Yeah.
Quote, make anyone feel stupid, but I'm not that smart. I'm learned. That's what it is. I'm a very learned person. I read and I write and I figure things out on my own because that's just the analytical brain I have. But you have to be able to step back from what you were and become a new person, and that
takes time.
You reinvent yourself. It takes time. Yeah, I got a new haircut. I got a new job. All that sort of stuff, and you learn to just be happy. Yeah. Because for a while, it gets dark. It does get dark. You don't know what you're going to do, where you're going to go, and you have to learn to just flow and just go with it. And I still have jiu-jitsu. I'm going to compete in jiu-jitsu, so you have to have something to look forward to. At least for me, I had to go. Okay, I got a goal. I have a goal with my daughter.
Yeah.
Win a world title in some form of jiu-jitsu. I'm sure it'll be no-gi because I'm not a good gi. But I will get my gi black belt. It's just you have to have these certain goals set up in your life. Like you listen to Tyson Fury on Rogan's podcast?
Yeah, I did.
It's all goal oriented, and I hate to say it, but me and Tyson are cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
Doing wild, degenerate things that you just.
Yeah, no, I just listen. You've told me some of the stories over the years, and some of them have been obviously well documented as well. Ian, obviously, there's, for you, there's obviously been a lot of sort of ups and downs in your career. Is there regrets there? Are you at peace with them now, or do you have to be at peace with them, or is it something that you're always going to live with for the rest of your life?
Actually, you know what? I made peace with it.
Good for you. Good for you.
I mean, I have so many regrets. I'll be the first person to admit that. Well, let's take all the bad stuff, all the things that happened to me. Again, finger quotes. I still look at them as my fault. Getting sick, or whatever. All these outside things that happen to me, injuries, whatever it is. There's something I could have done at every turn to make those not happen. Whether it's those things, or the injuries, or getting sick, or it all, for me, it all falls in the same line with, okay, well, don't invite your crazy ass girlfriend or ex-girlfriend or wife to a fight. don't let that affect you mentally. Don't let outside things or people or places or whatever affect you.
Yeah.
And I let the outside world ruin me. You know, it's no one else's fault.
Did you look at that maybe, and obviously, you know, towards especially, you know, the latter part of your career, the last number of fights, some of them fell out. Obviously, you were sick, things like that. There was a number of incidents. Was that maybe telling you should have maybe retired a little bit sooner?
Yeah. I tried to reinvent myself, go to Ryzen, and had catastrophic results. And it just, you know, I can't imagine anybody. I got cut by a rope, and then I got, you know, one punch by Horiguchi. Like, you know, it's done. I remember walking backstage after Horiguchi hit me and thinking about how I felt in the ring after that punch. And sure, that fight should have gone on a few seconds later. Most likely he would have finished me. I'm fine with that. But I did get a good shot on the ref. I did get a nice deep double leg. You never know. Maybe that one. But I remember standing when the ref stood me up, and I looked out across just wherever the ring or the people, total cross-eyed, Bambi-legged, was like, okay, I'm done. I'm over it. Like, I've got enough damage in here already, and you know, as everyone knows, I died of a drug overdose.
Yeah.
And I didn't just overdose and get out that night. No, I was in the hospital for 10 days. I was dead. Okay. I put myself in the hospital snowboarding with a head injury really bad. So I need to step back and also think that I'm a businessman.
When did you have the snowboarding injury? Recently?
No, I was a teenager.
It
was in high school. Right. And I had ice burn all over my whole face. I was sleeping for a couple days in the hospital.
Wow.
And, you know, those things take their toll. So I just, before you know, and I hate to put this in this context, but before I off myself, because I'm that kind of crazy. I'm that kind of stupid. Where maybe if I had more brain damage or I had, you know, more brain damage realistically, that I would, you know, I have the potential to do something stupid like that. And at least I can see that and go, okay, done. I'm over it.
So, but you see something like that, are you taking precautions, talking to people and seeing people in relation for that not to happen?
Well, yeah, again, I have a good structure around me. I don't need to go see a doctor. I don't need to take medicine. You know, honestly, for me, my medicine is cannabis.
Yeah.
You know, and granted, I do have a stress disorder, so I do have to take some sort of Klonopin every once in a while, which is just for anxiety. If I have a really stressful week, I gotta take it. And I'm not proud of it. It's something I'm trying to stay away from because I've been getting rid of all the stressors in my life. And I can't remember the last time I took Klonopin.
Well, I don't think I don't think you should be. You know, I think it's pretty open now. A lot of people are with, you know, sort of disorders like this and illnesses like this because, you know, mental issues are a part of everyday life now.
They are, and at least we're able to talk about it, especially as men we're able to say, yeah, like I was sad, yeah, I did cry or whatever, I did feel these ways, and how do I fix it? To have people like, you know, Tyson Fury or maybe even myself to help out people. Again, it's about helping other people get better, about helping young fighters, you know, not have to go through the things that the rest of us have had to go through in our lives, in our careers, and whether you're, you know, a world champion or former champion or not, that doesn't matter. We're all the same, you know, at our core. We're all the same sort of person. We're all fighters. So, you know, my new thing is just trying to help out my community as much as possible.
Definitely. All right, a few quick fire questions before we let you go, and do appreciate the time, man, as always. Career highlight. We got to ask you.
Man, career highlight. That first fight with DJ was a lot of fun.
Yeah, they're great fights.
My life took a drastic turn after that. My life spiraled out of control after that. That was a good highlight. You know, even though it ended so poorly, just being able to share that time with DJ in the cage and feel that energy and that drug, like you said, was incredible. So I'd have to say that, or beating Daryl Montague for the Tachi World title.
Tachi Palace.
I became the best in the world in a parking lot of a Indian casino in Central California, Lemoore of all places.
Yeah.
Not in but it's hollow ground for MMA. I'm the baddest man on the planet right there. So
yeah, Tachi Palace fights, Juicy Formega, you, Daryl Montague, the list goes on. Some unbelievable fights back in the flyweight division before it was obviously embraced by the bigger promotions. But man, they were some unbelievable amounts. Biggest regret, if there's any?
Biggest regret. Like I said, I got tons of them. I can talk about them for days. And I'm at peace with them.
Good stuff.
My biggest regret,
in terms of fighting,
not the rest of my life, would have to be how I let my life spiral out of control after that first fight. I should have come back and stomped on him. But I came back, and I cut 18.8 pounds in the last 20 hours for our second fight. Wow. I mean, I was bloated, and I by midnight after weigh-ins, I was 152.2. Shredded.
Wow.
Just bloated and gross and unhappy, and like
152.2.
Within how many hours is that? 8 or 9 hours.
Holy shit, man. Jesus Christ. Match you didn't get to take or to fight. Is there a match there that you would have loved to have had and that you didn't have?
Man, I mean, there's a lot of fights I want. I mean, I do owe Neil Sery a fist fight. Realistically, I mean, I owe that guy a fist fight. So, we never know. Maybe next time I'm in Ireland, we'll get drunk and get in a fight with each other.
Yeah, Neil does a podcast with us now on MMAfighting.com as well. Myself and Petesy Carroll. So it's good fun. Neil's always in good form.
Myself, hello. He's a good dude. He really is.
He is definitely. Neil's a pioneer, just like yourself, of mixed martial arts. Obviously, you're an American sort of pioneer and flyweight pioneer in the terms of the sport on a world level. But listen to me, Ian, it's always a pleasure. Listen, I'm looking forward to seeing what you do with your career, your new career now, and I'd love to see you get in an analyst role. It'd be a great thing for the UFC to get you on board at some point. Always a pleasure, my friend. Listen, hope everything works out well for you. Do appreciate it.
Thank you very much, and I'm proud of you with this new show, man. Good job.
Cheers, brother. I do appreciate it. And that was Ian McCall, Uncle Creepy. Big thanks to Ian for stopping by on the show this week. Great character. And listen, best wishes to Ian, obviously with his retirement. Some really interesting stuff there as well. Ian said this for a number of years. I've known Ian for quite some time in terms of the UFC Flyweight division. He's never been totally happy with the way the UFC have treated the guys, such as Demetrius Johnson himself, putting promotional stock behind them. For me, this has been a long time coming, and Ian is something, he sort of mentioned there in that interview about, one championship potentially negotiating with the UFC in the past to acquire that flyweight division. Petesy, first to you, what is the future of the UFC flyweight division after Demetrius Johnson going? For me, it's worrying times to the flyweight division in the UFC.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And once again, it's another nod towards meritocracy not actually having a big place in the UFC. The flyweight division was a brilliant division in the sense that it had an established champion and lots of people trying to take shots off him. And as soon as this becomes very interesting, he's just lost the title. Off you go. So, I mean...
it drives me mad. And, I'm one of these people, in terms...
Well, he's one of the greatest fighters who's ever lived. Like, right now, he's the best fighter ever, and likely at present the best fighter at present, even though he's lost to Henry Cejudo. Like, that's what's crazy about it to me. But
it's a major issue, even in terms of the lightweight division, and we'll get to it in a few minutes' time in the terms of, Ferguson fighting GSP. There's no validity anymore, Simon, at all in championship belts, what should be done. It's all about what's going to, line the UFC's pockets, and in relation to WIMG as well. A lot has changed since they took over.
Yeah, I mean, Johnson has dominated the flyweight division, but he's done it on a very skillful level, and he's seen off all competitors, not necessarily with relative ease, but more often than not with relative ease. And funnily enough, Dominic Cruz said ahead of Khabib and McGregor that when they were trying to match Cejudo and Dillashaw, he was asked what he thought of what did he think of the matchup, and he said, well, actually, funnily enough, it looks like to me that the UFC are going to get rid of the flyweight division. And because there was so much build-up with the Khabib McGregor, it kind of got washed away. But when you look at it now, and then the trade that's happened, he was dead right. And
Petesy, sorry if I interrupt you, is it a blessing in disguise then that the UFC had Henry Cejudo win that title? Does it take maybe a little bit of the heat off in terms of fan reaction, media reaction, that Henry Cejudo is the champion now?
I think it made it a lot easier for DJ, because I mean, obviously it's a lot easier separation then. Like, I mean, if you're not the promotion's champion, they are going to be more open to this kind of thing, even though we haven't seen it before. But if he's still the champion, they couldn't really do this. They absolutely couldn't do it. So I think that's a big part in it. Him losing that title is a huge part in it, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's very frustrating for me. In terms of, you know, Ben Askren, what we're going to get here, Simon, obviously a guy, and, you know, again, for me, he hasn't passed the tests that are necessary to warrant the hype that's around him. You know, he hasn't come up against the cream of the crop in the UFC. He hasn't come up against the cream of the crop in the welterweight division in terms of these new emerging talent that we've seen over the last 12 months in that welterweight division. You know, some of his fights in ONE FC, I think we go back to the Santos fight, the eye poke, you know, very underwhelming performance. A guy that probably 9 of the top 10 ranked UFC welterweights would easily dispose of. And, you know, he made a meal and arguably was losing that fight until that incident. Is it a massive acquisition for the UFC, Askren?
I think they're kind of like the CM Punk thing. It's how they manage it from here. There's a lot of eyes on the trade. It looks like the UFC have got what they wanted, and they got an undefeated fighter now to come into the rankings. But I always say, like, an undefeated record asks more questions than it answers. Does Askren's, as you're saying there, does his record so far stand up to scrutiny? I don't think so. I think Douglas Lima is probably the standout name. He hasn't fought since November last year. Then again, his range of wins is 6 TKOs, 5 submissions, 7 decisions. So he's kind of well-rounded in that sense. I think he needs a top 5, maybe 5 to 8 somewhere contender, and he needs to win that fight to put him in place to get going. It's kind of like when Eddie Alvarez came in and he fought Donald Cerrone, but Alvarez lost. But Askren needs to win to capitalise, and then to see if the trade, you know, will be what the UFC want from it.
Petesy, is this another Hector Lombard situation for the UFC where we're bigging up a guy with massive excitement? You know, obviously a guy that's very, very highly thought of in the world of wrestling and his grappling ability. Is this going to work out for the UFC? I'm very concerned that it's not, and you know, I think you might feel the same way.
Like, it's an incredibly effective style, but what it definitely isn't is a spectacular style. When you look like, and you consider that you had a guy flipping someone over his head and then ending up in an armbar, that's what you're after giving to ONE FC. For a guy who, like, Ben Askren tweets like a champion, man. He's an absolute savage online. Very, very entertaining. His fight style can come across as the exact opposite. I agree with Simon in that Lima's probably the notable name. He also has Koroshev on his name. Like, they are huge wins. They are massively impressive wins. But it hasn't been great to watch at times. So I think what the UFC need to do here is put them in the biggest fight they possibly can, just in terms of their business.
But what is the biggest fight they possibly can? You know,
GSP or Conor McGregor or Khabib Nurmagomedov.
I said GSP, and I don't
any of them.
I don't like the talk of this Khabib GSP fight. I know, you know, we can go on and we're going to talk about it in a couple of minutes.
That's what they do, though. Yeah, that's what they do.
Do they want more of the talk than actually, you know? Do they want us talking about it more than actually the fight actually happening itself?
Yeah, like, I mean, this is how it's always been. Even before Khabib and Conor, everyone's like, if Conor touches him once, he's dead. If Khabib gets him down, he's dead. And I was like, it's not going to happen like that, lads. Like, that's what they're going to say against Ben Askren. This lad will wrestle you and you just die. That's what they're going to do again. And then we're going to be watching 25 minutes of fighting going, Jesus, lads. We should get tweeting.
You know what, Pete? I don't say it often enough, but I love you.
Thank you. No,
You're a gas man. You're a gas man.
Thank you.
But no, I wish you felt the same.
Save it for the showers.
Simon, now, come on, leave that out now. But, you know, in terms, for me, it is worrying. I think with the UFC, I agree with you, Simon, maybe not on the CM Punk level, but I agree they have to be very, very clever in what they do here with Ben Askren, because as Petesy said there is a lot you can market this guy on in terms of how he actually conducts himself on social media and in his interviews. He's fantastic. I've had the opportunity of interviewing him a few times. He's a good dude, but I'm just worried for him that lack of experience against the highest level, he could come unstuck. And I think the emerging contenders, as I've said, you've Usman, you've Ponzinibbio, you've Darren Till, who's obviously coming off a title loss, but he's going to get back in there. You'd imagine stronger than ever. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. These are all fascinating dynamics. And Petesy, it's interesting enough, and we mentioned this, Tyron Woodley. I was on to Duke Rufus, who was on the show this number of weeks ago. He used to work with Ben Askren a little bit. and Ben and Tyron are actually really, really good pals. So that's a fight I think we can almost automatically rule out.
Yeah, that's what he said anyway. Like, I mean, a lot of people were thinking, oh, would these two fight? But I honestly think Ben Askren's not here for the long haul. I think he retired from one last year, and he said, unless the UFC come along and give me a massive fight, I'm not doing it. So, I mean...
Well, then do we go along the line, Simon, that he's already agreed on a fight? You know, is that possible?
I don't think so. I think he has a couple of options in his head, and I think they're probably accurate options in terms of it's either GSP or it's Khabib. And if it's not that, it has to be something bigger. The only thing bigger is Conor. That's a very unlikely fight, though. But I expect him to get one of those two guys. Sorry for cutting across you there, Simon.
Simon.
What?
Ben Askren.
Yeah.
Opponent. Now. Name. Who?
Wonderboy Thompson.
Ooh, that's a tasty one. Yes, Stephen's been very quiet. I actually can't get in touch with Stephen.
Or Jorge Masvidal.
Yeah, I'm not sure Masvidal wants that fight, though. I wouldn't imagine he would go for that fight. I think possibly he's going back down to 155 as well, if I'm not mistaken. So, interesting times ahead. But listen, it is great to have Ben Askren in the UFC. I'm obviously very disappointed, being a big fan of the flyweights, that this is sort of happening, that we're losing one of the best flyweights in the world in the UFC. But, a great addition for ONE FC. Obviously, the addition of Eddie Alvarez a couple of weeks ago as well. And, good for DJ, getting big bucks, and probably getting respected a lot more by the owners of that promotion. Okay,
I say Siri versus Henry Cejudo. Siri, get Neil Siri back.
That's it.
He's the draw. He's the money fight.
Let's get the little goblin back. It would be great. It will be great. He doesn't need to dress up as that. He looks like Schmeagol. So that's his Halloween outfit. He doesn't need one. Love you, Neil, by the way, as you know. Okay, right. Let's kick it on a little bit. Big rumours floating around the world of mixed martial arts. It was actually Dagestan MMA on Instagram. They actually revealed the Conor McGregor Khabib news. They've said Khabib Nurmagomedov versus GSP is in the works, and also Ali Abdelaziz, Khabib's manager, has come out and tweeted he's some very big news coming. For me, I don't like the fight. I think, I'm a purist. I like to go back and look at the whole situation. I think the UFC really need to try Tony versus Khabib again. I think will be the 5th time they're going to try it, if they do try it. For me, GSP has tampered around with the thoughts of cutting to 155 pounds. We're not really sure anything along the lines of what weight class this fight will be at yet. There's reports of a catch weight of 165 potentially for the title. Simon, are you interested in seeing this fight, in terms of the division pan out? I think there's enough fights there for Khabib in the lightweight division for him to stick around, defend the title, instead of looking or entertaining these other fights. Yeah,
I don't want to see GSP Khabib, no. Khabib talked going into the Conor fight, or at least leading up to it, that Conor just kind of picked fights here and there and wasn't a real champion. So if Khabib wants to live by what he says, he now has to step up to that and fight Tony Ferguson, and then possibly the winner of McGregor Diaz 3, if that's what's next for them.
Yeah.
So there's 2 or 3 fights there in that division for Khabib. Now the GSP fight, or that Mayweather nonsense, that can, he can rule that stuff out as well.
Please don't even mention that in this show. We don't want to talk about that. Petesy, I look at this and I do, I'd love to see part 5, attempt number 5 for Tony and Khabib. Obviously it was supposed to happen in Brooklyn at UFC 223. If they don't go and give Tony the fight, I think, Tony's the biggest loser here in terms of what he's not getting from the promotion. 11 straight UFC record wins in the lightweight division. Has Tony hyped himself up enough to be in the conversation in terms of, selling a pay-per-view fight at this stage?
I mean, yes, but he's not going to come near the numbers that GSP would. Like, that's just a fact. Like, it's not going to happen. Well, then
are we basing this fight then 100% on the numbers?
Yes. Well, Conor McGregor fought Floyd Mayweather. You know what I mean? Like, that happened in this. This is because of the UFC. Like, it's like they are definitely going to do that if they can. Now, one thing I will say about MMA Dagestan, that page, it'd be much like the Mac Life saying something was on. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's basically like a spinning machine for the Khabib and the Dagestani guys. So, yes, it corresponded with Ali Abdelaziz's tweet, but just based on what GSP was saying to Ariel Helwani just a few weeks back, it seems pretty impossible that this could be even on the table. Like, GSP was laughing, going like, UFC won't give me another title shot at 55. What's wrong with you? We just ran away the last time.
Is GSP's health even in, is he at 100%? I don't think so from what he's saying, what he's been saying, and, obviously relinquishing that middleweight belt, and, talks of a cut to anything below 170 are a big, big worry for me anyway.
It's never happened before. He's older now, obviously. Like, that can work both ways, as in muscle mass is harder to keep on you when you're over a certain age. But he got his body into so much trouble trying to keep it at 185. But usually keeping weight on is a lot healthier than losing an exorbitant amount of weight.
Sometimes.
So, you're mistaken.
Not after a bank holiday weekend in Dublin.
Exactly. But you see, if it's serious health issues are coming from keeping weight on, you'd only imagine that depleting his body to the state of dehydration is not going to work out that well. But I mean, the payday is likely going to be big enough that it would convince him to do that if this was a possibility. Well,
another interesting one, Simon, I'll throw this one to you. Is this a knock-on effect for Conor McGregor in terms of who he's going to fight next then, if this fight is in the works?
Well, I mean, he came out and said he wanted the Khabib rematch, but he's happy to wait in line, which was a bit odd. I thought, I wrote about it on offthebrawl.com. If you look at when he lost to Nate Diaz the first time, it was next day, I want Diaz again.
Yeah.
He wasn't having it any other way. This time it's, we'll see who Khabib does in his next fight, and we'll rematch down the line somewhere. So I think he'd be happy if it was Tony for Khabib, or if it was GSP for Khabib. It gives him probably Nate Diaz 3, and gives him time to think about what he really wants to do.
PT, is Tony Ferguson versus Conor McGregor a big enough fight for Conor to have a dip his toes in terms of cash and money and pay-per-view sales?
Probably not. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves even talking about Conor fighting at the moment. Simon talked about the difference between the Nate Diaz fight when he lost. The biggest difference between the Nate Diaz fight when he lost and what's happened now is Conor was meant to shoot a movie the week after the first Nate Diaz fight. That's right, yeah. He cancelled it at the drop of a hat. I have to go back to training now. I lost the fight. I need to prove to everyone what I can do. What did he do straight after Khabib Nurmagomedov? He went on a whiskey tour. Now, I'm not trying to say him going on a whiskey tour shows he has no interest. I'm sure it was booked in advance. But it's been two very different reactions. This man is a global icon. He doesn't need to fight to make money anymore. I think it would have to be a huge name to get him back there. If we're talking in terms of meritocracy, that probably doesn't make sense, but that's likely what they will do. If he does come back, it will be either Khabib or GSP.
In terms of meritocracy, where does Tony Ferguson go then?
Maybe the 1FC with Demetrius Johnson.
All right, fair enough. Leave Tony alone.
I know he's brilliant. Look, I'd love to see that. I'm just being realistic.
Yeah, no, you are right. You are right. Is there not a sense where they have to reward Tony now, Simon? With the 11 straight, he's beaten Frankie Edgar's record. He's a guy who's right up there, and I've called it for a long, long time. I think Tony should easily be next in line, considering what he's accomplished since his Ultimate Fighter days in the UFC.
Yeah, I think he beats Khabib. I said it. We talked. I agree. The day after, or the day whatever it was after the Khabib McGregor fight. What does he have?
What is next?
It has to be Khabib. And same for Khabib. Khabib has to fight Tony. If this is what being a proper lightweight champion is,
for all what he's been preaching.
Yeah, he has to do it.
Yeah. Very, very interesting times ahead in the UFC. We'll obviously learn more about that potential fight in the coming weeks. Ali Abdelaziz saying he's some big news to break soon, but Ali said that a number of times in the past. So we'll take that with a pinch of salt for the moment. Anyway, we can draw a line on the Mayweather Khabib stuff, thankfully, because I don't think anyone wants to have to sustain a period of talking about.
But they're both undefeated, Niall. They're both undefeated. What would happen?
Come over to the octagon, Floyd. Then we'll entertain it. Okay. All right. Let's have a little look towards UFC 230, which goes down this weekend in Madison Square Garden. Derek Lewis challenging for Daniel Cormier's heavyweight championship. Look at a couple of the fights on the card. Chris Weidman versus Jacare Souza as well. Also a really, really good standout fight in the card. And obviously, PT's favourite, Israel Adesanya, is going up against Derek Brunson. First off, I'm very, very concerned. We're going to put up a graphic there. You'll see it in a second of the ticket sales in Madison Square Garden ahead of this fight card. It is a very, very, very underwhelming fight card for Madison Square Garden, and a market the UFC have obviously tried so hard for so many years to get into. And now we seem to have this largely underwhelming lack of pay-per-view sellers, Petesy.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, Daniel Cormier, we know, is one of the great pound-for-pound fighters in the history of the UFC, but the fact that he only drew 380,000 boys when he was fighting Stipe Miocic, champion versus champion, that's worrying. Now, we talked a bit about this yesterday. You'd assume that the UFC saw this massive pop. Lewis got a 229. The fact that he's become an overnight social media superstar, they think that this is a fight that can generate a lot of pay-per-views. Otherwise, this wouldn't have happened on such short notice. They wouldn't have put it on top of the card. The fact that they have to do that for the heavyweight title is a bit worrying. But I am looking forward to the fight, and I'm interested to see how that kind of that new social media fame does that actually go into pay-per-views. Are we going to see a big?
That's very interesting, and I think, in terms, if we look at the social media and what Derek Lewis has gained over the last number of months since that fight. What is it, a month ago? I don't even know, to be honest with you. It just seems like a really, really quick turnaround.
Well, you made this point to me, Niall. Like, you were saying, like, the thing is, Instagram likes are free. Instagram follows are free. This is going to cost you $70. So let's see what happens.
Let's see if the real online social media fans show up for Derek Lewis on Saturday night. Simon, I don't think they're going to show up. I think this is a very, very underwhelming pay-per-view for the UFC to put on in Madison Square Garden in New York City.
Yeah, I mean, even I was thinking about breaking down the fight. I think it's going to be Cormier by submission in possibly the second round after Brunson.
So you're basically going along what Daniel said himself. Do you agree with it?
Or I was going to say Brunson, Derek Lewis. I do agree with I didn't hear him say that, but yeah, that's what I would have thought. Yeah, I mean, he landed a haymaker with 10 seconds to go in his last fight. He was getting clearly whipped, and now he's in the driving seat for a title shot, or gets a title shot because they had nothing else to put in there. Yeah.
I'm very worried about Derek Lewis in this fight because, he's had a lot of back injuries. It's not so long ago he was in that fight. PT, is there any way he can do it here? Is it that one-punch power a very, very dangerous element that he can land in this fight to catch Daniel Cormier and upset the world and win that UFC heavyweight title? Because I know you believe this fight is only going one way too.
Yeah, no, I've completely got it for Cormier. Like, this is the thing, right? Everyone that talks about Derek Lewis is kind of like, oh my God, Derek Lewis, it's so funny. But he is 9-1 in the UFC or something. Like, it's pretty incredible. Record, yeah. Like, I can't believe that. Like, that's absolutely insane. I don't think he can do it. Like, I don't think he can do it. But it's MMA. It's the most ridiculous. There's so many things going on that everyone can win. There's no kind of absolute dead certs in this sport. But if anyone's as close to being a dead cert, it's Daniel Cormier when he's matched with Derek Lewis.
Listen, I think Derek has a chance. I'm just, extremely worried about, the turnaround, his back injury.
Well, like both guys, like this is a thing that's crazy to me. Like these Madison Square Gardens, right? Like equivalent, like that's one of the big marquees of the year. You have International Fight Week, and now we have this, and we have the end of year show. They're the big shows, and so we've got two guys that everyone knows is injured fighting each other in the main event. Like Daniel Cormier is like, oh, how's your hand? It's only 20% broken. It's fine. Yeah. And then Derek Lewis has sciatic or whatever it is, the sciatic nerve. Like it's crazy.
It's very forced. This main event was very forced, to what it could have been. It could have been, obviously, Nate Diaz coming back against Poirier, which, originally for me should have been main event for that card. It was obviously co-main event. It's just sort of fallen out, and it seemed very rushed for the UFC to throw in replacements on this card. And again, for me, just not happy with the matchmaking in the UFC in a lot of fights at the moment and a lot of what's going on. Simon, your thoughts on that? Is the matchmaking up to par in the UFC at the moment? Are they rushing this? Did they throw this together just to get a main event?
Well, they left it to the last minute. I wouldn't say they rushed it because they knew the card was coming up. They left it to the last minute. I think Weidman Rockhold.
They went so long without actually, confirming what the main event was. That was the issue for me. Having really understanding what is going to happen.
If you think about it, it would have been Weidman, Rockhold, Diaz, Poirier, and then Cormier. Probably not against Lewis, against somebody else. That'd be a solid card, But it's kind of just falling apart. And when this happens, if I was the UFC, I would consider going, tell you what, we'll make this free to air. Or we put
they're not going to with it.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. Otherwise, they're just going to be embarrassed because this isn't being teed up nicely for them.
I think we might have a lot of dark lights in the arena on Saturday night there. But yeah, I think we're all going to pick Daniel Cormier here. I don't really need to get the lads' opinions after what they've just laid out on the table there for us. I think Cormier is going to win it. I think Lewis could land on him, maybe worth a few quid if you're a betting man, for the KO from Lewis if you've a spare few quid to throw away. Okay, there's two other fights in the card and I want to get these very quickly. We're actually pretty short in time. Chris Weidman and Jacare, really, really good fight. But two guys, Petesy, that, you know, maybe they're in the twilight, maybe they're coming towards the end of their career. On paper, what are we going to see here? Is it going to be a strong fight?
Yeah, like I assume it will be a very strong fight, but I think you're right in the sense that their lack of momentum has kind of taken away from the excitement. I mean, the last time we saw Chris Weidman, he bet Kelvin Gastelum, the guy that's now going to fight Robert Whittaker for the title at the end of this tough series. But the fact that he has been inactive through various reasons hasn't really allowed the fan base to get behind him. Like maybe if he had fought two times since then, New York crowd would be behind him and he would sell some tickets. But I just don't. Doesn't get the juices flowing. Yeah,
definitely doesn't get the juices flowing for me either. I think the whole card's a little bit underwhelming. Jacare, are we going to see the same monster? Are we going to see that bounce back ability? Is he going to get Chris Weidman to the deck and use his jiu-jitsu game to ultimately put a halt to Chris Weidman?
It's kind of remarkable they haven't fought yet in the UFC when you think about how long they've been there, and they've both been kind of top contenders or a champion. Weidman really needs to win this. He's lost 3 of his last 4, and it's almost a must-win. Like if he loses, I don't think they'll get rid of him because he's so highly ranked. But
he's so highly rated. The UFC brass love him as well. So
yeah, and they're still
tell that to Demetrius Johnson, lads.
Yeah, that's all right. Let's. I think we've gone there. We've got her again. All right.
Sousa is almost a perennial contender, and he wins over Belfort, Brunson, Robbie Lawler. He's won a woman at Misasi, the Strikeforce champion. It's a great fight. It really is. It's just as we were saying earlier, the life has kind of been sucked out of this card. And it's kind of been overlooked almost.
Yeah, definitely.
Who do I think?
I've got to go Jacare.
I'm going to Sousa. Yeah.
I think Jacare's going to get him to the ground and probably choke him out in the second round. That's what I believe. Petesy, is there any way back for Chris Weidman?
Yeah, no, I actually think I just found that Jacare looked a bit old in his last fight. Definitely. And against Whittaker as well. That was the first time I was like, Jesus, that doesn't look like the same guy that we said. Like, he's 38 years of age now. Yeah. And really for his game to get going, he needs to get on the ground. Like, not saying he's a crappy striker, like he's capable, but Chris Weidman's a savage wrestler. Like he's a brilliant wrestler. Like to get him onto the ground is going to be very difficult. So I can see it playing out on the feet.
And Weidman's striking is very underrated as well. Has been his whole career. And I think if he can implement something similar to what Robert Whittaker did against Jacare, I think Chris has very, very good chances. And I do agree with you. I thought Jacare looked really horribly old in his last fight. And listen, I'm no spring chicken either, but I generally think we saw something happen in his mileage there in his last fight.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. Like, now you have to remember, you are 10 years older than Jacare, so it's slightly different. But I mean, I get your point all the same.
Now that we've just said all that, actually, I'm changing to Weidman. Thanks, Petesy.
All right. Yeah. Listen, I nearly even changed my own mind there when I properly thought about it. So no, listen, I am going to go with Jacare still. I think he's going to be able to pull off something on the ground and win the fight. Okay, one more fight I want to just have a quick touch on. A real superstar, a guy we were talking about earlier on in Don Madge, who's potentially got that star power. Israel Adesanya, I think for everyone, Petesy, and you've spoken to Israel a number of times. This guy is an absolute superstar in the making.
Yeah, it's just like one of those exciting people to be around. Like I get the same feeling off Israel as I got off Conor very early in his career, and I got the same kind of thing off Darren Till the first time I talked to him. They just kind of have this incredible ability to believe in themselves and make people believe in them as they do so. Look, this fight could go terribly wrong for him in the sense that Brunson is capable of just lying on top of guys and making it miserable for them. But it's one of those, like, it's nearly like Khabib and Conor, where whoever is able to implement their game plan is going to have a field day, I think.
I think Adesanya gets this done. I think this is a big test for him against Derek Brunson, Simon. I think he has the tools. I think we've seen him go the distance, maybe got tested a little bit in some of his last fights. I think that's a learning curve, and I think we're going to see a big statement from Israel Adesanya against a very capable guy in Derek Brunson.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think what Petesy was saying there about the feeling you get off him from the Conor and Till,
And he's gone 5 rounds as well. I think that's crucial for a young guy as well to experience that main event, everything coming into it.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's not really much to add. I mean, this is going to be a huge test. I think he will get it done. It'll be a stoppage as well, and then all of a sudden he's in, maybe...
Petey, just one final one for you on this. Are we going to see a massive, massive statement from Israel? I feel we are. I think this is the opponent. I think we've seen, obviously the Brad Tavares fight where he's gone 5 rounds when he main event, and we've seen the Vettori split decision. It is time for him to really put on a statement here in the UFC, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I think he's absolutely... I think he's already made statements, to be fair, but I think this is a good opponent to make a big statement. It kind of reminds me of Conor v. Siver, where it could be a showcase,
Can't wait for it. All goes down on Saturday night in New York City. Hopefully the crowd show up to it. Worrying scenes. There is also a couple other fights on the card. Sijara Eubanks against Roxanne Modafferi. Very interesting there. Sijara Eubanks obviously was supposed to fight for that flyweight title back at the Ultimate Fighter. She was pulled from the card in Canada at UFC 231, then put back on this, all over the place. Very, very interesting. Lyman Good also returns against Ben Saunders in a welterweight clash, and some European interest further down the card. Okay. One more point of topic before we get out of here. And Pete, I'm going to throw this to you, my good pal. Cage Warriors 100, really, really good card. Lots of fight announcements this week. In terms of European MMA, it's a very, very exciting card and very, very exciting times for Cage Warriors fighting championships.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny because only 2 months ago I was like, geez, I don't know what they're going to do here. I don't know if they can actually do anything this big. And boy, is my face red. It's absolutely unbelievable. First of all, I didn't expect him to match Jack Shore and Mike Eckendeo for that bantamweight title. That's great ridiculous. Fight. Mike Eckendeo, of course, is a very close friend and main training partner of the last man who held that title, Mr. Nathaniel Wood, who's making big waves in the UFC at the moment. And a massive thing for me is getting Paddy Pimblett on this card.
Draw.
The guy's a superstar. I don't care how you feel about him once you feel something about him, and that's how he feels as well. I mean, everything, even Joe McColgan said to us on yesterday's episode of Eurobash, he was like, Paddy doesn't have the title, but he's more important than the title. He puts
eyes on everyone else that's on that card.
Yeah,
and
well,
it's the McGregor effect.
Even though Cage Warriors has been proven many times that that's the route. If you get that title, you go to the UFC.
100%.
Another route is if you beat Paddy Pimblett, you go to the UFC. Yeah. So it's an incredible thing. And of course, you have Philip Mulpeter, the Honey Badger, in action against Nicholas
Fat Joe McColgan returning as well. Great news.
It's great for Irish interest. It's great for UK interest. Just an absolutely brilliant card.
Absolutely stunning card. Cage Warriors fighting championships 100. Great to see Cage Warriors back with such a really, really strong card. And looking forward to that. That goes down in just a number of weeks' time on Saturday the 8th of December in Cardiff in the Ice Arena. Can't wait for that one. Hopefully going to be over at that one in attendance as well, along with Miel Flower there, Peter Carl. Petey, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show this week. Do appreciate the time, my friend.
Thanks very much, lads. Cheers.
Simon Maguire, as always, your pretty angry face. Good to have you on. Good to chat some MMA. We'll be back next week, I'm sure, no doubt, with more incredible talking points from a sold-out Madison Square Garden card this weekend in New York City.
After Derek Lewis stuns us all, yes.
Hopefully so. It'll be good. Just be good for the division, I think, spice it up a little bit.
But without doubt, but it's not going to happen.
I don't think so as well. All right, guys, big thanks to you for checking out the show and listening again this week. You can obviously find it on our YouTube channel. Go over and do subscribe. There's a couple of playlists there of Off The Brawl. Do hashtag Off The Brawl if you want to get involved in any conversation as well with the show. We'll answer some questions, all that. If you do use the hashtag Off The Brawl, I'll get to them this week. Big thanks to my man in the booth there, Ronan Mullen. You know Ronan's pretty face from the boxing. Nice one, Ronan, for producing the show here this afternoon. Big thanks to Ian McCall also for stopping by on the show this week. Do check out the fight cards. UFC 230 goes down this weekend. So from Niall McGrath, Simon Maguire, Peter Carroll, it is good luck and good night.